Hello and welcome to this presentation. My name is Ian Dover. I'm from METS Ignited, the Industry Growth Centre for the mining equipment, technology and services sector in Australia. I've been involved with METS Ignited since helping to set it up in late 2015, and I've had a number of roles since then. The presentation today is directed at miners, specifically how to win friends and access Australian research funding to solve your key business challenges. In this presentation, we'll have a look at METS Ignited's role in the ecosystem in Australia. We'll have a look at the mining research and innovation value chain. The main part of the presentation will be a plan designed to help miners access matched funding. We'll be looking at then how to win friends through collaboration around the ubiquitous problems that present to mining. And then finally, there's a call to action for those that would like to help do something about it. So METS Ignited is one of the 6 industry growth centres established by the federal government. All of these growth centres have a number of key objectives. In our case, the 2 that are very important for this presentation are accelerating technology commercialisation. What that means is that there's a lot of technology development and research that goes on, but Australia really hasn't received the benefits of the commercialisation over the last 15, 20, 30 years. And secondarily, we're looking at enhancing the management and workforce skills to allow a lot of the international maturity that's required in our industry to be developed. So why am I qualified to talk about this topic? Well, I guess in particular, in my early career, I was involved in a major collaborative project in North America, one of only 2 Australians seconded into an aluminium industry project that was brought together Alcoa and Alcan and Reynolds, 3 fierce competitors in the North American aluminium industry. But realizing that they could not solve this problem themselves, and it was essentially a process-related, process understanding problem to open up a new market for the industry, they came together to collaborate and work out how to do this. After 3 years, they went their separate ways, armed with the information and the knowledge that they'd received. I was heavily influenced in all my career as a result of participating in this particular project. Furthermore, I've been involved in a lot of business turnarounds and startups that cover supply in manufacturing, METS and IT. As a fellow of the Institute of Company Directors, I've got national director experience on peak bodies, a university senate, several small and medium-sized companies, and some not-for-profit organisations as well. And for my sins, right in my earlier career, I have a company-based PhD, which integrated metallurgy, manufacturing principles, artificial intelligence and business studies. This happened in the mid to late 1980s, when artificial intelligence was at a very early stage in its understanding and its application. Australia's mining innovation value chain can be depicted in the diagram on the right. This is what we're looking to achieve. Miners as customers on the right-hand side, accepting supply and technology and innovation from METS companies, but also with the backing and the support of the research organisations in Australia, be they applied or fundamental research. For the last 30 to 40 years, the miners, particularly the Tier 1 miners in Australia, have accessed research not only in Australia, but around the world. And they've done that very successfully. As a result, though, the mid-tier miners have not been able to do the same. The money that's required to access the research and the money that's required to run these long-term programs have just not been available to the mid-tier miners. Furthermore, research at QUT's Centre for METS Business Innovation has shown that 75% of all patents in mining lodged in Australia come from METS firms. So if we can actually get the METS and the researchers to collaborate and solve the problems that the miners put forward to them, particularly the problems that you as miners are not able to solve directly by yourselves, then we will see huge advantage to Australia in mining and also huge international competitiveness improvement in the METS sector, which is what we're looking for. We want to build on our mining DNA in Australia. We have global credibility for over 100 years as smart miners. We're adept at integrating technologies to deliver strong operational performance. This global reputation is also based on our regulatory systems in Australia, delivering worker well-being, safety, environmental performance. We have a wonderful mining and mineral education and research set of institutes. We have a successful background in software technology, and the application really started back in the 70s with Mincom. And we have highly successful remote mining operations, and increasingly with autonomous fleet and remote operation centres. We have high productivity and operational efficiency, some of the best in the world, and we have a very efficient contract mining sector focused on optimising the value chain for mining. International mining companies contract Australian mining personnel to operate mines all around the world, and the development of these capabilities and our international reputation have been built on the thousands of Australians in these innovative and supplier companies. In order to go forward, I just want to introduce a very simple problem-solving approach, one that I've been using for over 30 years. When we ever have a problem, it doesn't matter if it's a crisis in the short term or a long-term research program. We start with understanding what is the situation now. It gives us the ground. We then assume success. And with that success, identify, well, where would we get to? What would be the characteristics of that success if we achieve the end point that we're seeking? Once we have the start point and the end point, it's then very easy, to set a plan to move forward from the now to the where. So let's look at customers like mining companies driving innovation and research in Australia. Let's look particularly at the mid-tier miners who for the last 20 or 30 years have generally been absent from significant research programs in this country. The comments that we've had back from the mid-tier miners are such that it takes too much time and money to deliver good outcomes. We can't wait this long for research. We run lean and we don't have the experienced resources available to engage. We're not comfortable collaborating with each other. It's too problematic. It's too risky being guinea pigs. Who else has done this? Has it been done in another sector? We don't like accepting things without a very good business case. This is part of our risk aversion. The pandemic has forced a new set of priorities on us. And naturally, we'd like to own our IP so we can get the outcomes for the lowest cost possible, ideally for free. What these comments and this situation has meant, though, is that other sectors in Australia are achieving a far greater proportion of public research funding than mining. This is disappointing, given that mining has been so important at bringing Australia through the global financial crisis and now recently the pandemic. So if we're successful and we do have miners embracing research to improve performance, what might be the characteristics of this situation? Well, firstly, we'll have miners coming together to discuss and agree their priorities. Now, this happens already to some extent with ACARP and IMARC, but we'd like to see this extended. We'd like to see the mid-tier miners in particular get more involved in coming together to agree on their priorities and having the opportunities to scope the problems, to pass them to researchers, to involve other parts of the research community in Australia that go beyond the technology. The technology is one part of the business challenge. What about the other aspects of the business challenge in terms of the social science or the marketing or the economics? We can bring those in as well, and we should, for the benefit of the industry. Business cases are developed to confirm the investment of funds. We don't want to put money into major research programs unless there is a good business case to support it. We believe that the ubiquitous problems are the ones that are best addressed collaboratively. They're the ones where every mining company has it more or less. And they're the ones that if we address them with a reasonable amount of urgency and a reasonable amount of funding, we're likely to get a far better outcome that then can be delivered to the Australian industry overall. If the miners will pool their dollars, it's possible to leave a much greater business outcome from the research. Naturally, the METS are there to deliver the plug and play outcomes. They need to be looking at the research. They may not be involved directly with the research, or the innovation, but they need to be there to understand when something appears to be commercial, or when it's likely to deliver a benefit to a larger audience than just one or two or a small number of mining operations. We need to have the research structured to deliver early benefits to industry, and I'll make a comment about that a little later on. We also know that there is stranded research in Australia. This is research that has been done. It may be developed to quite a high technology readiness level. Now it could be at a 6 or a 7 even. But for a range of reasons, it's been put on hold. And often these reasons are because of changes in the tier 1 miners, where priorities have changed, where restructures have occurred, and where individuals who have championed certain innovations have moved on. We're suggesting 4 steps in order to move forward. How do we achieve miners embracing research to improve their performance? Firstly, these miner collaboration forums, where they come together and agree the priority problems to address. There'll be a level of scoping of the problems required, but these can be facilitated with others, so that the miners themselves are not having to put forward huge amounts of their time in order to see this achieved. We need to understand the potential rewards. I make a comment about the recent BHP tailings challenge, where very high level scoping statements were produced, but the level of detail that's come back from the METS companies and the researchers has been a surprise at how much can be extracted from a problem statement in order to deliver a potential solution. And certainly we need to check with IMARC and ACARP to ensure that there is no duplication of any of the work here. Point 2 is the solution proposal. The miners can select the researchers and the METS to deliver expressions of interest to solve their priority problems, and then review those expressions of interest to determine which ones are most likely to deliver the best outcomes. At the same time, we can seek the relevant stranded research and ensure that we're taking advantage of that, so we don't have to duplicate any research that's gone on in the past. Business cases are important, and these need to be co-developed by the miners, by the METS and the researchers. Step 3 then is applying for the match funding. Again, we can use consultants, those consultants that are already involved in developing the bids for the major CRC and ARC programs. Let's bring them in and help them to craft the bids for the match research funds directed towards the mid-tier miners. Of course, we can engage with the venture funds, because many of those will have an interest in the outcomes and may even be able to help fund some of the research. So, point 4, the project delivery if the bid is successful. Plan the research, make sure that there's no overlap with ACARP and IMARC. However, if unsuccessful, then perhaps we need to reapply or else seek alternative financing opportunities on the back of the robust business case that's already been developed. What sort of problems might we focus on to be solved collaboratively? Now, there's a list here. I won't go through them all. You can scan them as I'm talking now. But exploration analytics, to maximize net present value or to extend mine life. Looking at energy solutions. Interoperability is an ongoing issue, not just within specific OEM systems, but more generally to integrate all sorts of technology in mining operations. We've got the issue now in more recent years of mine rehabilitation and closure performance. The environmental and social performance issues are becoming far more important, and maybe these are the ones, because they're common to many of the mining operations, maybe these are the ones that we should be starting with in terms of collaborative approaches to major research funding. Management and repurposing or avoidance of tailings. Already, we're seeing things happening around the world as a result of the focus on this particular issue. There will be others of interest to you. Why not bring them forward to see whether other miners, other collaborative miners, would have an interest in coming together to solve these problems? We're not just focusing on the miners here. We're actually talking with the cooperative research centres and the Australian Research Council about how we can influence the researchers themselves to make a change in the way they engage with industry. What we have here is a list of the expectations we've delivered to the researchers. We're looking for major input from customers. Those customers are miners, they could be energy companies, certainly they could be the global METS companies. As the users of the research outcomes, we need their input to understand the benefit and to quantify the market demand. We would like to be focusing on those things which will have a big impact on the industry and therefore a large market demand. Australian METS firms with the commercial track records should be involved to provide the pathways to commercialisation and scale up. This is not just the application in a couple of mining operations, which has often been the definition of commercialisation in the past in Australia. That's no longer sufficient. We need to have good outcomes developed into plug-and-play solutions for application across the mining industry in Australia and around the world. This will then develop the Australian METS sector into a more internationally competitive sector. The students themselves need to be embedded in industry partners so they can become capable of working both in industry and research, using the language of both. Ideally, these research students can participate in any of the industry partners graduate programs as well. This next one is really important. We suggest at least one theme of the research program is devoted to a continuous understanding and update about the market for the proposed outcomes. In other words, what are the trends in the market? What's happening with the customers and the competitors? How's the demand changing? What's the technology changing downstream? What are the supply chains doing with regard to the tech companies, for example? If we're looking at critical minerals and energy minerals. Point 5, research is structured to deliver benefits to industry in the short, medium and long terms. We say benefits and not research outcomes because we note that they may be different. My experience is that having researchers, having students involved and embedded in industry is a great way to have more people, more critical people, looking at the process, looking at the data, looking at the modelling that's gone on so far. These can deliver research benefits, or these can deliver benefits to industry way before the outcomes of the research are in place. And finally, we want the research leaders to be able to confirm their industry track records as providers of solutions to business and industry problems. It's not sufficient now that they have a good academic track record. We need them to be able to engage effectively with industry and with business. So before concluding, I'd like to make one comment about this industry clustering. In Europe, in the last 30 years, they have developed now more than 3,000 clusters of companies. Big ones, small ones, researchers, government, across all industry in the European Union. We need to take advantage of that in Australia and their learnings, because what this does is lower the risk of innovation coming into major companies. And in this case, the way it does that is that the miners will see integrated sets of products and services coming in, not just a series of point solutions that the miner themselves then has to integrate into their operations. But this understanding is actually set in place from the beginning of the research. And instead, we're building coalitions, if you like, to address the most important problems to miners in Australia and around the world. The call to action then is simple. METS Ignited is already starting to implement this approach to industry-driven research and innovation. If you'd like to explore this with us, if you'd like to become a part of accessing the potential matched government funding to improve your business performance and improve Australia's sustainable economy at the same time, then please email me or give me a call. Get in touch. We're starting this program now. We have already introduced some particular industry topics to researchers. We'd like this to extend more broadly across Australia, across all the commodities, and in particular now that we're starting to look at the value adding to our critical minerals in Australia. Here are opportunities that we haven't had to address for the last 30 to 40 years. The capability is still in Australia, there just hasn't been the market. Come and speak to us, please. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks very much.